All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL props video. We're going to be touching on the top prop bets for this Thursday night showdown between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, right away, this is kind of a fascinating slate, just with the kind of dynamic of kind of two backup quarterbacks playing in it. I'll touch on Easton Stick and how he looked, but we also have a lot of injuries to touch on for this game. We're going to see it as a very low over and under. 34.5 is going to be the over and under, 3-point spread. Now, I do want to mention that the Raiders were in they were in the lowest scoring game in quite some time, with the game being 3-0. Okay. That was more a game in which the defense, it was a beauty of a game to watch from a defensive mindset. Let's put it that way. Like, it was not a bad game to watch, I don't think. Like, I forget which Super Bowl it was, but it was a very defensive struggle. And like, it was just defensive play after defensive play. And like, what Super Bowl was that? Okay, yes, this one between the Rams and the Patriots, where a lot of people are, oh, this Super Bowl sucks. And I was watching, I'm like, no, this is good. This is fun football. This is how football is meant to be played. You know, just execution on each play. And I don't want to sit there and act like that was exactly the case in that game, but it was more of a really good defensive game call. And don't get me wrong, like, Vikings had a bunch of drops. Aiden O'Connell definitely had his flaws as a quarterback, not really pushing the ball downfield. There was some untimely turnovers and whatnot, but really my point is that the Raiders defense has had a few games this season where they have really looked good and they have really been able to shut out an offense. And that's kind of my concern, is that could be defeatable. Denver really kind of had their way with them when they wanted to. Now, that was also a weird game, guys. There were like 8 potential turnovers in that first half where either a ball was batted out of the quarterback's hands or like just tipped at the line and just almost INTs, players getting the ball punched out. Like, 2 really weird games honestly happened between these two teams last week. Kind of some fluky stuff. Raiders, I would say, definitely outplayed the Vikings. They just didn't come away with the W. Just some unfortunate penalties, unfortunate mistakes. The Chargers, I would say, played better than what it seemed like on paper as well. I thought Easton Stick, guys, it took me a series to realize that he was actually the quarterback in the game. I had just not paying attention to the number on the back of the jersey. He looked pretty decent. I mean, there was a few plays that were drops, but all in all, he was probably a little bit slower on his reads, but all in all, like, not too much of a difference between him and Herbert in that game. Now, don't get me wrong, we know, maybe you guys don't know, but like, based off of the preseason, we know he's a quarterback that can score points, but he also is flawed. He is a good Justin Herbert backup. I like when teams do that, when they have their starting quarterback and they have a backup quarterback that's very similar. The offense should still be able to function in a way that we would want in terms of predictability for the offensive weapons, and I think that's what he's going to present. Now, we do need to touch on the injuries on both sides of both teams. Okay, Herbert's out, we know that, so it's going to be Easton Stick. I'll tell you right now, the passing prop I think I like, but it's also weird given the matchup with the Raiders. Austin Eckler, guys, by far his best game film wise, probably this season, but definitely since the injury. I don't know what happened, and I know he had a couple of difficult matchups in there, but there was a very eye-popping play against Green Bay where he easily scores a touchdown on if he was like fully healthy, and most running backs would score on it. Basically every single running back would have scored on it. He got caught from behind. He just looked extremely slow. It looked like he had that juice back. Now, that could have just been a one-off situation. Could have been, going against Denver. I don't really think that was the case. Now, sure, the line was getting more push than they have in previous games, but all in all, I thought Austin Eckler looked really good. The burst was there, and they started to use him in ways in the passing game that you would want them to do. And so it does feel like he's back. Like, that should be an encouraging sign. And against the Raiders, you can rush the football against them. Madison was able to get some yardage against them. Ty Chandler was okay. Could have been better. Looking at the receivers for the Chargers, Keenan Allen was a non-participant on Tuesday. I think we're all expecting him to play. When we look at the snap counts with the Chargers, he's basically not leaving the field. That's going to be my expectation there. He had a couple of plays that, probably should have been catches, really good balls kind of that should have been catches. And then he also had one catch that probably shouldn't have been one. Kind of a mixed bag game for Keenan Allen, but all in all, we can trust Keenan Allen to have a good game, and I would say he probably is going to have a good game. We look at that first matchup against the Raiders. That would be slightly concerning. Obviously, they had Mike Williams back then. I do want to point out as well, Josh Palmer is expected back. Josh Palmer, the offense probably needs him, because with Mike Williams out and with Josh Palmer out, the offense was not really functioning in the way that you would want an NFL offense to function. I think that's going to lead to Jalen Guyton not getting that many snaps at all. Also, Alex Erickson, I think we're just going to see Josh Palmer instantly step in and get around 60% of the snaps, probably even more than that if he's good to go. it's always tough to read those situations. Like if you're watching the pregame coverage and they're maybe saying some stuff that might suggest he's not 100% or not going to play a full allotment of his snaps, which to me is 60 to really 90% of the snaps, then we could be concerned. But I think he's going to be someone we could potentially be looking at. And then Johnston, guys, really he was impressive in that game. That was finally the one game in which I was impressed. Now, him and Easton Stick connected on a couple of big plays where, they weren't the easiest catches, really awesome throws. And he's kind of a tougher guy to bring down. I'm like, okay, that's the player that they drafted. But it does create a different situation now with the fact that we are getting Joshua Palmer back. It's tough to know what to expect with those receivers. We know that they're all going to get work. I think Johnston, Palmer, locked into at least 60%. Keenan at least 80%. Looking at the tight end situation for the Chargers, Gerald Everett, I think we're going to see what we have seen from him really this whole season. He's going to get 4 to really 6 targets. Now, he had 8 targets in that last game. They were playing from behind. I think that makes sense. Against the Raiders, wasn't that productive. And my question is, with Josh Palmer back, are we really going to see that number spike up that much? Past 4 targets? I don't think so. So he's probably one I'm staying away from, especially due to the fact that, he's only gaining around 60% of the snaps. They're getting Parham some snaps. Now, he's most likely going to be out in this game. Well, actually, he was limited, so never mind. Definitely something to monitor. But all in all, I don't think that really changes how we would approach Gerald Everett. I think the biggest difference for Gerald Everett is going to be Joshua Palmer in terms of production. Now, all that being said, my biggest question mark is with Joshua Palmer back, what is that going to mean for Austin Eckler in the passing game? We have seen, and a lot of people maybe haven't come to this conclusion, but last season when Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were healthy, Austin Eckler's role in the passing game really took a dip. And it's really Keenan Allen's the biggest mover in that. But when Mike Williams was injured, his passing game utilization didn't change too much. But then when Joshua Palmer was also injured, he started to get more work, but he was also a little bit banged up, and it's tough to really gauge what we're going to see. What I saw last week, though, was that they were trying to get him involved in the passing game in the ways that they did the previous season, hoping that continues. And so I started with that so we can kind of gauge which props we want to go in on. Especially right now, because we are not getting all the props. I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon. I kind of wait as long as I can. At the same time, I am running a company, and views kind of dictate the success of that on this channel. I kind of got to get out this video in a timely manner. And it's kind of a weird thing, guys. Like, honestly, like the later I wait to get the most information, the more it hurts my channel. So it's a weird balancing act. But looking at right now, guys, like Keenan Allen receptions at 6, we can see that Underdog has bumped it up from 5.5 because it's highly likely to happen. Okay. And I'm trying to get into prize picks here. What is your guys' thoughts on the flame, on the popular thing? I don't know if I love it. I feel like it's misleading. I get why they do it. It's a great advertising thing. I've mentioned so much fluff, but I mentioned that I did some interviews to be on the marketing team for PrizePicks. I really like the way the company presents itself in some things. One of the things I mentioned to them that they said they were thinking about doing, and I was kind of glad that they didn't do it, was kind of promoting things that were misleading to the user base. And I kind of see this as one of those things. It's a little bit misleading. It's encouraging bet, and I don't love that. I will say one bet that I do like is going to be Easton Stick over passing yards. I'll get into that, but we are going to see that we're not getting any Keenan Allen props just yet, except for this one. Okay. I don't mind that. I think he's going to be involved in the passing game. And like, he had 12 targets in that game. Like, I don't see his production falling off because of Easton Stick. I see the production falling off because of the matchup with the Raiders, who are pretty darn good. Okay, his worst game thus far this season was against the Raiders. That being said, Palmer had a pretty good game in that game. And that was really kind of a weird transition week from Mike Williams getting injured as well. So again, it's tough to really gauge what was going on there, but we do know, or at least I have seen, that Raiders defense is pretty good now. All in all, though, I like the yardage prop for Easton Stick. We're seeing passing attempts at 31.5 could be one that we're looking for the over at. It's tough for me to get there. Remember, he still played like 53% of the snaps. You add on a few more attempts, he probably does get that over. But again, it's tough to gauge because Eckler looked the best that he had all season last week. And looking at how you should attack the Raiders, I think it's going to be on the ground game. So all in all, I think that's a good line. I'm probably favoring the over there, but I'm also probably favoring the over for passing yards. This started at 201. Both PrizePicks and Underdog have since adjusted it. I think I'm fine betting the over here, guys, but it might be a situation in which we are waiting to see if they do drop it down to 196.5, which is what the average sportsbook line currently has this line set at. And I just thought he was impressive as a passer. Given how he had looked in the preseason, I thought he took a good step back this preseason. No, he looked pretty solid in this game. Definitely encouraging. Again, I think I'd be more encouraged by the pass catchers, say Austin Eckler I'd be fine with. If you guys like the over receiving yards, the data isn't exactly saying that. And again, with Joshua Palmer probably back, I do feel like that's going to be a little bit more difficult to get to. And I do think we're going to see a little bit more of a short yardage attack. The Vikings were pretty successful against the Raiders last week with some short yardage plays. And so I kind of think the receptions prop that we're getting with Keenan Allen is probably one that I personally think I can go in on. Again, 12 targets in that last game against New England. I would say kind of a similar matchup, honestly. Still 5 receptions in that game. So it probably has a good chance to be a push. And because of that line, I'm actually very curious as to where the fantasy score prop comes out to be. Because for Keenan Allen, let's say 6 receptions, 64.5 yards, the fantasy score prop should probably be around 13 or 14 typically. I would say if it's lower than that, I actually don't mind the over. And for what it's worth, we're getting the 2 most likely scores, I would say, for the Chargers for a touchdown combo. And odds-wise, for what it's worth, like Keenan Allen is plus 210. Actually, that's one of the sports. Let me just pull it up on my end. All right, so the average sportsbook line is giving Keenan Allen about a 31% chance to score a touchdown, whereas they're giving Austin Eckler about a 37% chance to score a touchdown. It's not the best odds. And for what it's worth, Josh Jacobs is about 45%. He's the most likely to score an anytime touchdown. But all in all, I do see this as a slight edge. So looking at the other props that we're getting, I mean, we're just not getting that much for this team just yet. I do think Eckler is going to be able to rush more than this. Like, he did play in 72% of the snaps. Again, Eckler looked good. The best he's looked thus far. The concern is that they got behind in that game. I don't see that happening in this game against the Raiders. I think a good example would probably be what Joshua Kelly did against the Raiders. Let's take a peek. 17 carries, 65 yards. I don't get this line. I really don't. I think this is one that we should hammer. To me, this kind of looks like a taco, a discounted square. And we're going to see that number on both sides. Now, I could definitely be wrong. He could still be banged up. But from what was seen yesterday on film, well, I watched it yesterday, he looked impressive. He looked healthy. It's not a safe bet to say that that's going to occur again, but I think the snaps, again, tell us a story that he was healthy in that game. All right, so I took a lot of time talking about the Chargers there. Let's go and get into the Las Vegas Raiders. So definitely a more difficult team to predict, I would say. Now, it was weird. Like, their offensive game plan was pretty spot on the first 2 drives. They constantly beat themselves. They really did. They should have probably won by, I don't want to say double digits, but at least 6 points. They were able to get Devontae Adams going early in that game. They were also able to get Jacoby Myers going in that game pretty fast. And then you look at someone like Hunter Renfrow as well, who finally had a good game, kind of. He had a key fumble. I thought Renfrow played well, but if you wanted to blame the loss on someone individually, Hunter Renfrow had one of the sloppiest, softest fumbles. Granted, again, I think it was a fun defensive game to watch. It really was. The Vikings were punching out a lot of passes and causing fumbles. It was fun. And the biggest question I have with someone like Hunter Renfrow is, what can we expect snap-wise from him? Okay, because last week he still only played 50% of the snaps, which he has been doing lately. I mean, that's encouraging, but we have seen them really not mess around too much lately, which is good. It's Devontae Adams, it's Jacoby Myers, it's Michael Mayer getting a ton of snaps, and then Josh Jacobs. We got to get an update on his health. It's going to sound weird to say, but I don't think there's going to be a big drop off in terms of production or increase in production going elsewhere with Zamir White on the field. Like, I don't think their game plan is going to change too much. We might see a little bit of Amir Abdullah, who honestly, I feel like he's always been a little bit underhyped since he left the Lions, but we're going to see probably a lot of 12 personnel. They want to establish the run. They want to make Aiden O'Connell have easy throat. And so one of the props that really stood out at the start of the week in terms of EV betting was actually Jacoby Myers for under, I think it was 4.5 receptions. And that was one that I did not want to bet. I was very hesitant to do that. PrizePicks has since taken that off the board. And I'm just looking at it, I'm like, Minnesota actually played pretty well defensively, albeit the Chargers are not going to play as good as the Vikings did. And if we look at that matchup against the Chargers, sure, Myers did not get going in that game. That was like the one-off game where he did not get going. Devontae Adams had himself a pretty darn good game in that game, okay? I think we're going to see more of that split between the middle. Like, those two are the two that are going to be on the field the most, and those two are going to be the two that I want to bet the most, because I think, especially this line on Underdog for 43.5 receiving yards, to me, that seems too low. We look at the average sportsbook line. They kind of have it set at 42.75 and favoring it as a 50-50. I don't know, guys. I know O'Connell isn't really like driving the ball down the field too much. I know a lot of the receptions for Adams, for Jacoby Myers are coming at the line of scrimmage, but all in all, like Jacoby Myers continues to impress. Devontae Adams, we know is Devontae Adams. I personally don't think that there should be that big of a separation between those two. And again, I know mostly Jacoby Myers' work is coming in short yardage situations. That being said, he's making the most of them. And at 43.5, to me, that seems too low. Michael Mayer receptions, I don't know if we need a touch. I'll take a peek at that for you guys. Like, we saw how many snaps he played. Like, he should be getting more targets, but it's kind of those two tight end sets that they're running out there where Austin Hooper is going to get a catch as well. So all in all, I probably do agree with the data that's telling us to bet the under 2.5 receptions. Kind of statistically speaking, that's the best prop bet that we have. I don't know if I want to trust Hunter Renfrow receiving yards. Devontae Adams at 6 receptions. I probably would say that that's too low. And so I kind of feel like we are gaining some slight edges here, at least in terms of how I see the game going. And we look at the Chargers here, guys, or sorry, I want to switch to PrizePicks. If we look at PrizePicks, we're not getting any really different odds there. I'm actually very curious what the receiving prop comes out to be for Jacoby Myers. If they bump it down to 4, because they just pulled it off the board until probably more sportsbook get their lines in there. I would say if they put it at 4, I'm perfectly happy to bet the over. Same thing with Underdog. So definitely pay attention to where that line comes out to be, because I think we could be gaining an edge. So I'll give you guys a couple of bets here. I do think I like Austin Eckler for over 46.5 rushing yards. To me, that seems to be, again, I hate using this terminology because I feel like it's misleading, but I don't want to say free square. It does feel like a very discounted square. I'm not trying to say I'm better, smarter than Vegas or PrizePicks or Underdog, but this one really stood out as being way too low. And I'm probably wrong here, honestly, guys, but he just needs to get 47 rushing yards for me to be somewhat right. And if we look at it, guys, like on the season in terms of rushing yards given up, you know, Las Vegas has given up a bunch of yards to opposing running backs. So that part should not be shocking. If we look over the last 8 weeks, they have been kind of significantly better, but it's a little bit misleading because they're the only team with 3 games in this sample size. And so 700 in comparison to other teams, you know, that wouldn't bump them up too much probably, but they would be below bottom half. And then for what it's worth, just talking about like receiving yards given up just while we're here, Chargers have given up a lot of production to opposing running backs in the receiving game. So maybe Josh Jacobs receiving yards we could be looking at. And oh my goodness, guys, as I was going to give a bet of the day slip ready for you guys on Underdog and PrizePicks, dear Lord, Underdog's doing it too. Oh, I just feel like it's misleading. It's encouraging bets that people typically wouldn't make. I'm actually kind of fascinated. I need to take a peek at it. So Halliburton, 12.5 assists. We can see the under, and did they say under or over? No, they did higher. All right, so 52.6% chance for the under to hit. Good start. Trae Young and then Cade Cunningham assists as well. Let's take a peek. Okay, so at least for Cade Cunningham, the line should be set at 6.5 assists. Okay, and that would be a great bet at 6.5 assists to bet the over at. But at 7, it's basically being valued as a push. And then Trae Young assist. All right, so the under is being favored of 10. That is what gets me here, and I know some people probably love to just the ease of betting. I know a lot of people will skip to the end of my videos and just use the bet of the day slip for that. Some people hate me when it misses. Some people love me when it hits without really knowing why or why not the bet slip was a good or bad bet slip. And I get that. That's part of the nature of the beast. But to me, man, that's annoying. That's misleading. I kind of I might do that. I'm probably going to tweet this out. It's just, man, frustrating. Frustrating. But let's go ahead and get into the bet of the day for this slip. Now, I want to call it the one good EV bet that we are currently gaining is actually Eric Kendricks for over 6.5 tackles and assists. That one has about a 54% chance to hit. We might get some field goal props as the slate progresses and whatnot for PrizePicks. Jacoby Myers over receiving yards. I would say that if you didn't want to use this one, because you're placing a bet on Underdog, by all means go for that, because on Underdog this is set at 43.5. I'll show you guys that in a second. I went with Easton Stick on PrizePicks. I do think that he is going to be able to pass the football enough. Again, I was kind of watching that. I thought he looked a lot like Justin Herbert. I'm not saying he's Justin Herbert by any means, but the fact that he's going to get Joshua Palmer back as well, that to me is encouraging. The fact that Johnston actually looked good last week. Keenan Allen, we're hoping is healthy, and that would be the biggest mover. If Keenan Allen sits, that is going to hurt this prop, but at the same time, thinking about it now, Austin Eckler receiving yards would then almost be a lock. Just be ready for that, because, yeah, Like, I think there's a direct correlation in games that Keenan Allen's out. Austin Eckler really dominates. And again, I thought Austin Eckler looked the most healthy he has looked last week. Now, it's a short week. I didn't really mention that in the video or during the video. That is a concern now that I think about it. Short week. How is his body? How is his ankle going to respond? That is actually, and maybe that is why the line's low. Because all in all, prior to last week and kind of a softer matchup against Denver, I get that. He didn't have that juice, and he did last. And for what it's worth, if you guys just want an EV only bet for really football, these are the two best EV bets that we have right now. Both of them are going to be over a 54% chance to hit. Okay, Matt Gay over 1.5 field goals made, and then Eric Kendricks over 6.5 tackles and assists. The one pause that I have for props like these is that there's typically not a lot of sportsbooks that give those lines out. So, when we're looking at the average sportsbook line, it could be one or two sportsbooks that are giving us those lines, whereas the other ones typically like 7 or so. And then just looking at underdog, guys, again, we are gaining a little bit of an edge here on underdog with the 3 receiving yards kind of edge there for Jacoby Myers. It could be a situation. I mean, 3 yards is a decent amount where you could, if you wanted to, bet the under actually on PrizePicks, bet the over on underdog. Kind of splitting hairs. Maybe there's a little bit of a middling opportunity. Again, we're taking the EV bet that's there. And then I think Austin Eckler is going to have a good game. Again, I just touched on the concerns. Those are there, but oh no, I think he's going to be good to go. Again, if you guys are new to underdog, never signed up for it, and you guys want to, use the promo code 905. That's going to kick back some money my way. I mentioned this on the video for NBA on 12-13, that some of you guys have done that. That has not went unnoticed, and I do really appreciate that. That is going to help out the channel, which really just helps me reinvest back into you guys pretty much. But that's going to be all for today's video. If you guys enjoyed the coverage, make sure to give a like and subscribe. If you guys want access to that 95sports.com PrizePicks and Underdog cheat sheet, it is available at that website for just $10 a month. Let's have a good slate. Good luck, and as always, let's keep cashing.